We have a director. What's his name?
Peter.
Yay, Peter Chen! Please come up on the song. Yeah, please.
The last time I saw this was probably 10 years ago. Probably the most I've ever seen of my film. Every now and then I keep watching it. I just sat there and watched the whole thing all over again.
Well, thank you, Peter, for being here. It's great to be reunited.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
And what a gift this film is, even 28 years later. The beauty, the power, the emotional kind of weight of this film is all still there. And such an incredible film. And I was wondering maybe we could start by talking about where it all began. You know, Ivy Ho wrote the screenplay, but did it all begin with her, or was it something you commissioned? How did it evolve?
Like most of my projects, I always have an idea, and then it's always half-baked, and then you try to make something out of it. You collaborate with a lot of great talent, from writer to the team, and then the actors, and everybody chips in. A director is not like an almighty creator. I mean, he just comes up with ideas and things that he wants to talk about. Actually, what we had before we had the story was the beginning and the end, bookends of the film, the train stations. So that was actually the beginning of the journey. We wanted to make something where, little did you know that at the very end that they already were together from the very beginning. That's the start part of it.
And there's these kind of parallel narrative lines that run through the film. You have the love story, you have the immigration story, you have Dunedin, Teresa Dunn's songs. How did those three strains kind of come together?
Then again, like all film, I think the film is good not because we are good or any one of us is great, but it's just because the timing is good. I mean, the film was made in 1995, 96 actually, conceived in 95, made in 96. And the years that the film was, set from 85 to 96, which is almost exactly the 10 years that I've lived in Hong Kong. I went back to Hong Kong in 83, 84, and it was really the best 10 years of my life, I think. And it was not supposed to be chronicling my golden age or my golden era, but also Hong Kong's most important 10 years before the changeover. And it's kind of like what I said just now. It's like a love story to those 10 years, and it's just the right time. When we conceived of wanting to make this story, Teresa Tang was still alive, and she was not part of the story. And all of a sudden, in the middle of script development, we've heard the news that she passed away. Then immediately we put her in the movie as the integral part of the movie, and obviously the title of the film too. That was not the original title of the film. And my original vision was something actually, I was making, most of my movies I was making before that was more commercial than this. Not that this is not commercial, this is still commercial, but most of my other films are more comedy and rom-com and stuff like that. This is actually less of a rom-com. So when we make this, things just happens. It's just a lot of stuff that I wanted to do something a little darker. I wanted to do a version. My first inspiration was Thus New York. My first inspiration was Midnight Cowboy. Actually, I wanted to remake Midnight Cowboy with a man and a woman instead of two men. So that was what I was trying to do. And then when we cast Leon and when Ivy came on board, the whole movie became more romantic, and it became less about the underbelly of Hong Kong and New York and everything, and it evolves into something like this. So sometimes, like raising a kid, you can't tell them exactly what to do. So they take on their own lives, and a movie just becomes a living person, and they decide what it wants to be.
You just mentioned Leon, and this is such an actor-driven film. I have to ask you about the casting process and what it was like working and directing these two wonderful actors that each other, Leon Lai. You even see, just even in the style of the film, so many extreme close-ups and the way the camera kind of just embellishes their beauty. Can you just talk a little bit about that aspect of the film?
Leon was on board from the get-go, and I had the task of trying to make Leon a good actor, because he was an idol. He didn't have a lot of really good roles to prove that he's a good actor. He's good looking, obviously, and I needed to make him less good looking. So it all started with, okay, can you cut your hair? And he said yes, and we went to his place with his stylist and with my production designer, and we were negotiating back and forth as to how short his head could be trimmed. So that was like the beginning of the whole journey. And Maggie was not originally the first choice for the film, because thinking that this film is about two mainlanders in Hong Kong, I thought it would be inappropriate to cast someone very urban in Hong Kong to play the role. So it wasn't Maggie that was in my mind. And
I heard it was Wong Fei.
yes,
Yeah.
it was Fei Wong. And Fei and Leon are both at that time in Hong Kong considered mainland. Even though Leon came when he was 5, so it's not exactly mainland, but one of the songs was like, I was born in Beijing. So we considered Leon more like a northerner. But then I realized that Leon is actually Indonesian Chinese. His father was Indonesian Chinese. And but he had that persona of being someone from China. And Fei obviously is from China. So, as you know, if it had it been Fei, it wouldn't have been the Southern Chinese Guangzhou character, which adds so much later to the film. So when Fei wouldn't even read the script and turned down the offer, so we were like lost, and we casted every single actor in Hong Kong, and including the sweetheart back home, Christy. She was at one point considered to be possibly to be the lead. But she was way too green as an actress to take such an important role. So ultimately, almost like a month before production, we thought maybe we put in Maggie, which is the most accomplished actress whom I've worked with, and we called up Maggie, and thought because she's such a good actress, maybe she can pull it off. And we sat down at this sunny lounge in Shangri-La Hotel called Library, and we sat down for 3 days reading every page and every line of the script. And she would give her input and try to make it work. And finally, she decided to take it well. And then we originally she was still playing Northern, but her Mandarin was so bad that there was no way we could make it work. So a week into production, we stopped and changed the script and turned it into someone from the south, from Guangzhou. And now, look at the movie. You could not imagine what would it be if had she been from Beijing too, if they're both from Beijing or from the north. Because that adds that extra layer of her pretending to be a Hong Kong person, as opposed to Leon, which is a northerner.
But one of the things that this film does so amazingly is the tonal shifts. There's comedy, there's drama, there's tragedy, there's even a kind of gangster element, there's the romance element, and making those shifts with it feeling natural and allowing it to flow and not kind of jarring the audience. This is really a master class in how to do that. Could you talk about how you pulled off these shifts within the film, the tonal shifts?
You know what? I think it was very. I think I keep trying to do something that people will talk to me and say, you know what, my favorite thing of yours is something else other than comrades. And 9 out of 10 times people will come up to me and talk about this film, and it is a pain in the butt. It's like I have never improved in the last 28 years. So I think I've made things that are much more ambitious. But maybe the beauty of this is because I wasn't thinking that much. And I think when you talk about the tone shift, comedy is basically in our DNA as a Hong Kong filmmaker. You wouldn't be able to be a filmmaker in Hong Kong. I mean, if you're not an action guy, you have to be a comedy because otherwise you wouldn't even be hired. Nobody would even put money in your movie. So the comedy aspect of it was, I felt that there are parts of it that is a bit over the top, a bit too comedic, that I might be, if I do it now, I might do it differently, but then if I do it differently, it wouldn't be as natural as this. This is really something that we shot in 28 days, and it was one of my most, and at that point of my life, one of my most low budget movies. And for people that cinephiles that know about Hong Kong cinema, I was making this movie back to back with the sequel to He's the Woman, She's the Man, which was a big hit. I mean, my my biggest box office movie in Hong Kong to date is still He's the Woman, She's the Man. And I was making the sequel to that film while I was making this. I mean, the two movies were made back to back. As a matter of fact, we made the Hong Kong part of this film and then went on to make He's the Woman, She's the Man in like 6 weeks, release it, and then went to New York to finish this film. So it was kind of like, this was like a +1, actually, because the studio wanted me to make a sequel that I didn't want to make. So while making the sequel, I made them stomach this, because this is supposedly not a commercial film. And it wasn't very successful at the box office when it came out. Most of the people have seen the film, including all of you. You probably see it in the theater and said no for the first time. Everybody that came up to me and said they've seen the film all saw it on pirated VCD or pirated links even back then. It wasn't a big box office hit, so it's, you can't explain sometimes. It's like events just happens the way it wants to happen, and you have no control over it.
Were there any lessons you learned making this film that you took with you for your future films?
I try not to, but it's really hard after you've done. I mean, I'm not a very productive director. I mean, sometimes I look at directors that have done 50, 60, 70 movies, which is normal in Hong Kong. I've done less than 20. But still, sometimes when you set a shot, and you feel like, hey, I've set this shot before, but this is the right way to do it. What am I going to do? I should do this because I've done it before. Or if I talk to an actor and say, can you give me that emotions, and I've used the exact same line with the actor in a previous movie. So it's really hard to, especially when I'm making character-driven relationship film. It doesn't matter what genre I hop from, sports movies, action movies, war epic, musical. But at the core, it's still human stories. And the way I communicate with actors is very similar in every single film. Sometimes you keep repeating yourself. I mean, one scene was the opportunity furniture store, which I love that store because I walked by that store when I was in primary school. It's a back street in Tsim Sha Tsui. I really want to show people that Tsim Sha Tsui, which is one of the most touristic districts of the peninsula, was the Star Ferry southern tip of the Kowloon Peninsula. That's where I grew up. And I always want to show people that it is not as metropolitan as it looks. It is really like a small town or like a village. Because there are a lot of back streets that when walk from school